Welcome to 2025, people. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel today. My name is the Crimson Wolf, and welcome back to Let's Talk Chelsea. It's been a while since we've done one of these, hasn't it? First off, I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, of course. It is the new year. It is 2025, finally. I'd say that 2024 was a pretty good year. Obviously, finally got the ye old YouTube channel off the ground. Not as far off the ground as I would like, but hey, we'll get there eventually, won't we? Please? Anywho, being the new year, obviously the January transfer window has just opened, and it also means we are at the halfway point of the season. We just played game week 19. The less said about that, the better, unfortunately. Not even going to mention it in this video, just going to move right on. So basically for this video, I'm just going to do a tier list based on the performances of every player this season. Now, there are some criteria for who is actually selected for this tier list, because obviously we have had a few players that have played this season. The big criteria, and really the only criteria, is that they have to have started at least one game. If they have started at least one game, they are eligible for this list. The academy players that we've seen come off the bench in the Conference League will not be eligible for this because they haven't started a game. Ben Chilwell is also not eligible for this list, as well he has played about 45 minutes off the bench versus Barrow in the EFL Cup. He has not started a game, so I'm not going to be including him in this list either. Most of the squad has started at least one game, so they are all included in this list. So, yeah. And this is going to probably be a pretty long one, so I'm going to stop wasting time. I'm just going to dive right into it. So, here on screen now, you should at least be looking at the tier list itself. There are 5 tiers. We have the top tier, aptly named top, which is just basically for the players who I believe have had the best performances this season, some of the best players that we've had this season. You've got, below that, you've got great, which are players that I don't think have been as good as the top players, but have been really, really good. Possibly a couple moments here and there where I think they could have been better, but largely it has been pretty good from them. You've got the average tier, which is largely going to be players that have been up and down quite a lot of the season. They've had good moments, but they've also had bad moments. Or maybe that's just not been either and it's been a middle ground. You've got the needs improvement, which should be self-explanatory, which is players that I think need to be doing better, need to be reaching higher heights than they are currently, or putting in more consistent performances. And then you've got the failure category, the lowest category. These are for players that I just don't think have played well pretty much all season. I'll begin with the first player. We'll be moving our way up the pitch. So we're starting with the goalkeepers. We're going to start with Robert Sanchez, and he goes into the needs improvement category. I've kind of said this all season, which is that Sanchez is not a sustainable number one. I still stand by that, and until he puts in a consistent run of performances, I will continue to say so. Now, he has had some good performances, and I'm not going to deny that. He has had games such as Bournemouth, such as West Ham, Everton, Brentford, where he has played really, really well. He's made some absolutely game-saving saves for us, especially the Brentford and Bournemouth games. So I'm not going to say he's been bad all season, but he definitely could have been a lot better. People are really running the narrative at the minute that Sanchez has won us more points than he's cost us. And while that might be true, it's not how many points he's cost us, it's the games in which he's cost us points. The 3 games that I can count him directly responsible for costing us points are Liverpool, Arsenal, and Man United. And I think there has just been a lot of games where he has been responsible for goals we conceded. Man City, I thought that second goal he could have done better. Obviously, he's massively responsible for both the goals we conceded to Brighton, but thankfully Palmer was having the game of his life. And similar thing versus Spurs, I think he could have done better for both of those goals in the first half that we conceded. The thing I will say with Sanchez, he does have all the tools necessary to be a top-class keeper. He just needs to apply them and apply them consistently. If he does that, then maybe he can become a long-term number one for us. But until he shows me that he can do that, he just needs to be better. Next, talk about Philip Jorgensen, and he's going in the average category. As I said, we've only really seen him in cup competitions, the Conference League, the League Cup, and 2 appearances in the Premier League. The Southampton game, we did concede, but I don't think that's anywhere near his fault, and he had some decent saves in that game, and his distribution was really good in that game. The Ipswich game, yes, he did conceive a penalty, but it's the dumbest penalty I've ever seen. Delap dives like he's an Olympic diver and got a 10 out of 10. It's unbelievable how the VAR allowed that, but not going to talk about that. Overall, I think he's been good this season. Yes, we've not kept that many clean sheets whenever he has been playing. I think he's only kept about 2 all season, which were against Noah and Barrow. But I think it is also worth mentioning that he's been playing with a massively inferior defence than he would have been playing with in the Premier League. So he's been let down by the defence numerous times for pretty much most, if not every, goal that he's conceded. However, he has saved us more than a handful of times. The Heidenheim game in particular, he was absolutely stellar in that game. He has made, that's actually an interesting fact, I brought this up at the time, he made the most saves in a single game out of any Chelsea goalkeeper since 2003. That is ridiculous. Versus Heidenheim, man of the match performance, absolutely. Probably the best keeper performance we've had this season. I know Sanchez has won us quite a few games with some good performances, but I think that one's probably the best we've had this season. Jorgensen, he has had some good performances. However, due to his lack of being able to break into that Premier League squad, permanently that is, I think I can't really put him anywhere higher than average. Next, I'm going to talk about Axel Disasi, and he is going straight into the failure category. I've genuinely not seen Disasi have a realistically good performance this entire season. I think maybe one that I can think of, which is the Ghent game when he got the assist for Pedro Neto. Maybe that one. But other than that, I think he's been largely shocking all season. I can't really think of any standout performance. Like last season, he had arguably the best performance any centre-back had all season against Man City. This season, you can't say that. Obviously, he's just been massively at fault for that game versus Ipswich. He's had some massive moments when he has been absolutely terrible. I can think off the top of my head some games like Bournemouth and the EFL Cup game versus Newcastle, where he has just been absolutely shit. And I don't understand why Maresca keeps picking him, especially playing him at right back. I could understand it when he was playing him at right back, when the whole Joshua Chempong contract situation has been going on. Now, obviously, that's sorted. Josh has started playing cup games, so that's good. Now, I don't understand why he started playing right back in the Prem. That's a really stupid decision. So, hopefully, we don't see any of that anymore. But Disasi has been largely terrible all season. So, honestly, I would not be surprised to see him sold either in January or the summer. And I wouldn't be sad about it either. I like the guy. He does have a lot of heart and he does give his all whenever he does play. And he never gets injured as well, which is something I think goes really underrated for the guy. He is never injured. I think the entirety of last season, he never missed a game apart from the end portion of the season when he was injured. But he never ever missed a game. He was largely bulletproof. I think he put up the second most minutes out of any player under Pochettino, only behind Conor Gallagher. So that is something that is very much worth a mention. But I do think he probably does need to go. I don't think he's quick enough for the Premier League, and he hasn't been good enough this season, has he? Next up, we've got a bit of an interesting one. We've got Captain Reece James. Now, I say interesting because Reece James has only played about 4 games this season, which was in between international breaks, the Liverpool game to the Arsenal game. And every time he has played, I think he has played pretty well. I think he played pretty well when we've played Liverpool. He played very well against Man United and Newcastle, playing at left back no less. So I thought that was very good from him. Didn't start versus Arsenal, but coming off the bench, I thought he looked alright. And we haven't seen anything else of him this season. So I'm going to put him in the average category. And that is simply because, while yes, he has played well every time we've seen him, he hasn't played that much. Similar to Philip Jorgensen, basically, which is that he has played well, we just haven't seen him play enough. Now, thankfully, he is back from injury now. He was on the bench versus Ipswich, so hopefully we get to see him start the next game versus Crystal Palace. Reece, when we plays, is probably the best right back in the world. I've been saying this for years. He just needs to start playing more games. If he can get a decent run of games under his belt this season, maybe he can get himself into higher tiers by the end of the season, but until he racks up a couple more games under his belt, I think average is probably where he deserves to be. Next up is Malo Gusto, and I'm going to be blunt and brutal with this. He is in the failure category. Gusto has had a terrible season, genuinely terrible season. Last season, he was one of the best, if not the best, right backs in the Premier League. He was absolutely stellar. I think he got about 8 assists from right back. He didn't miss that many games. He did miss a few, but not too many. And I thought he played pretty well every time he stepped foot on the pitch. I think he was probably our second best player that season, only behind Cole Palmer. So, honestly, I can understand why he's played this many games, obviously with Reece James being injured this season. But the fall off from Malo Gusto this season has been absolutely unbelievable. Now, granted, I don't think it's his fault. I do not think under any circumstances he suits being in this inverted system. I don't think he suits being the third man in a back three, and I don't think he suits being the one to invert into the base of the pivot or into that number 10, and I think that was a massive problem we've had for quite a while. So thankfully that's not a problem anymore. But I think there have been several problems with Malo Gusto this season. He has had one good game this season, I will mention, and he did play really well in that game. It was versus Brentford, the game I was there for. I thought he did play really well, but that was the game where he actually played as a right back. He played bombing up and down the pitch, putting crosses into the box. When he does that, he is really good. We saw that last season. As a conventional right back, he is really, really good at that. But this inverted system doesn't suit him. And now that Reece James is back from injury and now that Josh Acheampong has signed his contract, I don't expect Gusto to be given that many minutes, or I don't believe he should be given that many minutes, because I don't think he I just don't think he suits the inverted system. He is an absolutely stellar player, and I will not have anybody tell me he isn't a good player, but he has not had a good season. He's had some terrible, terrible performances this season. The ones that stick out to me the most, I think, the Palace game this season, he didn't play well. I don't think he particularly played well. What else you got? I mean, the Newcastle game, I don't think he played particularly well in that game. Don't think he was particularly great versus Arsenal either. I mean, his worst performance this season is the worst performance I've ever seen him have, which was versus Liverpool when he was played at left back. That was a complete disaster, which is something that Maresca needs to get over, by the way. Stop playing him at left back. It's a terrible, terrible decision. Did that versus Everton, it was, and it completely threw off the entire team, and I don't know why he did it. It's complete nonsense why he did that. So that was a nightmare. I'd never do that again. He should never be played at left back because he doesn't have a left foot. He needs to be played on his right side where he can use his right foot. So never do that. But yeah, he is in the failure category. He's just not had a good season. Moving on to the final natural right back in the team, Josh Acheampong. And he is also the highest rated of the right backs because I'm putting him in the great category. Now, maybe he belongs in the average category because of the same reasons as Jorgensen, as Reece James, because yes, he hasn't played that many games this season. However, I'm going to put him in the great category because I believe he has a lot more to offer this season. Josh Acheampong looks like a brilliant player. For some reason, Cobham has an absolute brilliant knack of turning out absolute world-class right-backs. I mean, from Reece James, Tariq Lamptey, Tino Livramento, Ola Aina, you name it. We've got 25% of starting right-backs in the Premier League. It's insane. Josh Acheampong appears to be another one off that line, and he looks absolutely brilliant. 6'5", dominant in the air, brilliant control with his feet, brilliant at dribbling for someone his size, is really impressive. We obviously saw him given his first start of the season versus Astana in the Conference League. Looked really, really good in that game. And I think every time we've seen him since, he has looked really good. We do need to start seeing more of Josh. I honestly think he could possibly have a career at centre-back. I think that could suit him really, really well. He does appear to have the passing ability. He's obviously tall. He appears to be quite quick as well. So I think that could be something to explore. But I think seeing him at right back, considering Reece James' injury issues, Malo Gusto's form and injury issues, could be something that we really need to explore. He does look a really good player, possibly should be an average because of the same reasons Jorgensen as James, but because of just how impressed I've been with him this season and how well he has played and how he has probably dealt with this contract situation very, very well. And clearly Maresca loves the guy and he has a big future here. I think he's probably entitled to be here. Now, the next player I'm going to talk about is Tosin. And Tosin is going in the average category. Now, Tosin has pretty much just been up and down all season. Like, he's not really, until quite recently, been getting minutes in the Premier League. He only really started one game until Wes Fofana's injury, which was the West Ham game when we did not have a fit natural right back at the time. That was his first start. But then since recently, he has started the last, I think, 3-4 games. And he's looked good in a lot of those games, apart from the last one where literally, like, nobody looked good. He's been up and down all season. He's looked decent in the Conference League, but that's the Conference League. You should be looking pretty decent. But him and the rest of that defence has looked average sometimes, and they've been at fault for their fair share of goals. He has had some good games. I think that West Ham game in particular was probably his best game of the season. That and the Everton game when he made an absolute last-ditch tackle to stop us from conceding the goal. He put his body on the line for that one. 100% respect to him for that. But I think he has just been too up and down for me to say that he can be anything better than average. I don't really know if Tosin's good enough to be a starting centre-back for us. There's a reason that Maresca has preferred playing Wes Fofana over him, and I think it's two reasons. One, I don't think Tosin's better than him, and two, he doesn't complement Levi Colwill the way Wes Fofana does. Tosin and Levi are too similar in the way they defend. I think Tosin being in the team has made Levi not look as good, and I think that is causing us some problems defensively. The sooner Wes Fofana comes back, the better. Tosin, he hasn't been awful by any means, but I think he should have been a higher standard than what he has been so far. Speaking of Levi Colwill, he is next, and he is the first player in the top category. Now, while I mentioned he hasn't been playing as good more recently in the past couple of games, he has been absolutely stellar across the rest of the season. He is 110% our best centre-back. He's been our best centre-back this season. He has put in some absolute gladiator-esque performances in some games. I think games like Brentford, games like Nottingham Forest, I think a lot of games this season he has 100% put himself on the line to make sure that we don't concede a goal. He has had some bad moments, I'm not going to deny that. I think he has had a couple games where he hasn't looked disjointed. He does also seem to have a problem with playing players on side unnecessarily. That's kind of due to his style of defending, where he tends to be the last man back, so I kind of understand that, but he has had a couple moments. But largely, other than that, I think he has been really, really good this season. As I say, I think he's been our best centre-back. He has made some absolutely fantastic blocks and challenges this season. But what makes Levi such a good player is his line-breaking ball passing ability. His ability to start our attacks is so, so good, because often it ends up with him getting the ball and then just line-breaking ball straight through their attack, straight through their midfield, up to one of our attackers, and that kickstarts our defence from there. He is so, so good at that. So I really do like what I've seen from Levi this season. I think he has, as I say, been our best centre-back. So hopefully he can rediscover a bit more of that form, because as I say, I don't think he's played particularly brilliantly recently, so hopefully he can rediscover that form. And yeah, hopefully he can once again prove that he is one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League. Moving into Wesley Fofana, and Wes Fofana is going into the great category. I think he has been a bit up and down a lot of the season. I think he didn't start particularly well this season. I think he had a couple dodgy performances at the beginning of the season. But I think he has massively grown into his partnership with Levi. You can see how the two of them work so well. Levi being the sweeper, Wes being the aggressor, being the pacey centre-back, being the one that brings the ball up the field, carries the ball up the field, being the one to tightly mark the attackers. Usually tends to be the one that's marking the striker as well, which is quite interesting to see. And he has done really well in that role. Very big shame to lose him to injury. We know what Wes's injury history is, so that is really unfortunate. And I think we are missing him quite a lot right now, because I think his partnership with Levi is so, so good, and it is so important to us. So I think we are missing that quite a lot right now. I think he has been good this season. I think he's probably had his best performance for Chelsea this season, playing Arsenal. I thought he was really, really good in that game. He's had some good games as well. I think the Palace game that we played, I thought he was pretty good. Don't think he was particularly brilliant in games such as Bournemouth and West Ham. The West Ham game, albeit not his fault, because he played a right back, and Bournemouth game, I think he just didn't play particularly well. But he has been up and down. Again, maybe should be an average, but I think just because of... I think Wes's performances don't really show necessarily as much when he's been in the team, but how badly we've missed him since he's been out of the team. So I think that's probably enough to have him being great. Moving into probably one of the most controversial ones on this list, or controversial players, I should say, Benoit Badiashile. And Benoit Badiashile's going into the needs improvement category. Now, most of Badiashile's performances this season have been in the Conference League, and I have to be honest, the first couple of those haven't been great. When we played games versus Servette and Ghent, I don't think he played particularly well. I think a game like Panathinaikos, he actually played really well. I think that was probably his best performance of the season, if I'm perfectly honest. Then you'll have a couple games where he won't play particularly well. So I think Badiashile's been a really weird one this season. He's not been given that many minutes. He's only started one game in the Premier League this season, which was versus Tottenham. And the first half of that game, because of the system we set up to have him play as the right centre-back, I don't think he looked good. He looked a lot better in the second half of the game when we played him as the left centre-back. So I thought that looked a lot better. Games such as the Panathinaikos game and the Leicester game as well, where he played particularly well, I thought he did look really, really brilliant. He looked like the aggressive centre-back. His ability to start attacks with his ball-playing ability, it looked really, really good. So I like what we've seen in those games from Badiashile, but we need to see more of it. Obviously, he's injured right now, which I think, again, is a big loss for us. I think maybe if we had him and Levi Colwill right now, we might not be having the problems that we're having. Unfortunately, he is injured. I do hope we get him back soon, because we could do with having a bit more defensive cover, because we are getting a bit frail now. So hopefully we get to see more about his shield some point this season, but I think he just needs to improve his consistency, basically, because he just does have those games where he'll be phenomenal and then the next game he could be terrible. So as long as he can up his consistency, I think we can be a lot happier with him. Moving into Marc Cucurella, and Marc Cucurella instantly goes into the top category for this tier list. He has been, in my opinion, the best left back in the Premier League this season. He has been absolutely sensational. It's really unfortunate that he's missed two of our bigger games of the season, both annoyingly games that we played on Merseyside versus Everton and versus Liverpool. And if we played him versus Liverpool, I think we might have been able to win that game. If at the very worst, I think we would have drawn that game. He has been a big miss for us in those two games when he hasn't played, but he has played so well across the rest of this season. As I say, I think he has been the best left back in the league this season, possibly even the best left back in the world. I think he has been so good. The Arsenal game is obviously the standout when Bukayo Saka just got absolutely decimated by the man. And you saw it when he came on in the second half of the Man United game. Seen it in a lot of games recently, such as the Brentford game, obviously when he got his first goal of the season. And a lot of other games around that time, obviously versus Tottenham, I thought played well after he changed his bloody footwear. We don't talk about what that happened with the slippiness and emulating Gerrard 2014. He has been such an important part of our team, and he's often a bit of a heart of the team, I think. I think he does end up being a one that brings a lot of the passion to the side, which is something you really like to see from the guy. He clearly loves being at Chelsea, and that is something you really want to see from someone like him. I do really appreciate what we've got from Cucurella this season, and hopefully we do get to see a couple more consistent performances that we've been seeing pretty much all season. Moving into Renato Vega, and Vega is going into the great category. And Vega, I think, has just looked good every time we've seen him this season. He has obviously mainly been playing Conference League games, and I think pretty much he's played really well in those Conference League games. Obviously got 2 goals, one versus Ghent, one versus Astana. So I think he has looked really good in those games. You can just see the intensity, the physicality, just the power, and he does it quite casually as well. I do wish he was a little bit more ferocious in those kind of instances, but he does do it very calmly. It often prevents him from getting booked as much as I really like to see. We have seen him come off the bench a couple times in the Premier League, mainly towards the first quarter of the season. And he has actually been given a Premier League start versus Bournemouth when he was played in the midfield alongside Caicedo, when we had quite a few injuries to some players. I think Vega, pretty much every time we've seen him this season, has looked really good, whether that's been a centre-back, when it's been a left-back, when it's been a DM. I think he's had some pretty good, consistent performances all season. So yeah, I think great category is just about right for him. Moving into Enzo Fernandez. And Enzo Fernandez is going in the top category of this tier. And yes, that is majoritarily for his form since returning from international break when we played Leicester, because his form since then has been absolutely unbelievable. His goals and assist tallies have just been going up, and it has been absolutely phenomenal to watch. He has looked a brilliant player, the best version of Enzo Fernandez we have ever seen. He's been scoring goals, he's been getting assists, he's just looked so good. Obviously, he got a goal versus Leicester on his return. He obviously got a goal versus Villa. He got the ever-important goal to put us ahead versus Spurs. And he's just been playing with an unbelievable level of confidence, and it's brilliant to watch. And maybe before that spell of the season, he probably would have been average, great at best. But since the turn of that international break, since he's come back from that, he has just been absolutely stellar. Actually, even before that, now that I think about it, because obviously he racked up a hat-trick of assists playing FC Noah. He got an assist for a goal versus Arsenal for Pedro Neto. Pretty much ever since he split up from his wife, he has just looked so good. And it's been absolutely brilliant to watch. And even some of his performance earlier in the season, I think Brighton is probably the main one that stands out to me. I think he has looked really good. I also think in the past couple games, like the past 3 specifically, he has probably been our best player versus Everton, versus Fulham, and versus Ipswich when we didn't play particularly well. I think he has been our best player in those games. So 100% I think Enzo Fernandez deserves to be in top, as does his partner in crime, Moises Caicedo, who has been, in my opinion, unequivocally the best midfielder in the Premier League this season. The amount of ground this man has covered is unbelievable. He is everywhere. This man could genuinely, this is a bold statement right here, but he could genuinely be better than N'Golo Kante. Now that is a bold statement and a half, I know, but it is genuinely so possible. At his age, for how good he is, he could be better than Kante. It is possible. His skill set's very similar to Kante's, and given his age and given how much he is able to develop, I think it is more than possible that we see a better Moises Caicedo usurp the best version of N'Golo Kante. You'd be very hard-pressed to find a bad Caicedo performance this season. Like, I don't think I can name you one. Like, even in the past couple games where we haven't played particularly well, I don't even think he's been bad. The Ipswich game, maybe you could make an argument that he wasn't great because his passing wasn't really there. But other than that, I don't think you can find a game where he's been bad this season. Like, he bagged an absolute stunner goal for Man United alongside a brilliant performance. He's our best player when we went to Anfield. He's been our best player in multiple games this season. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think he's just been one of our best players this season. I think he's been our best player this season. The usual man that gets tossed into that conversation is someone we're going to talk about in a bit, who has also been phenomenal this season. But I think the consistency and level of performances we've been seeing from Caicedo is absolutely unbelievable. Even when he's been playing at right back, when we saw that versus Spurs, we saw that versus Aston Villa, particularly when he's been played out there, he has looked really good. So 100% Caicedo deserves to be in the top category. Moving into Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, and he's going down in the failure category, or the failed category, I should say. I feel harsh about this, because Dewsbury-Hall hasn't been given a fair crack of the whip. He's not started a single Premier League game. Pretty much all of his minutes have come in cup competitions, playing in the Conference League and 2 games in the League Cup. And it's not been amazing. I don't think his performances have all been brilliant. He has had some good games. I think obviously he's bagged 2 goals in the Conference League versus Ghent and versus Shamrock Rovers. And I think he has had some good games. The Panathinaikos game in particular is one I remember him being quite good in. So I do like what he has brought to the table, Dewsbury-Hall. But for what we heard about this guy coming from Leicester, from Maresca, obviously being the one that would help bring the rest of the team up to speed on how to play the system, he just hasn't been given the games, really, has he? He's not started a single Premier League game. All of his Premier League minutes have been off the bench. And I just don't think, even in some of the Conference League games, I don't think he's played particularly brilliantly. For 25 million, it does feel like a really random signing, and I said that at the time. And I'm going to be honest, I don't expect for him to leave in January. I think he will probably stay around to probably help us lift the Conference League and then find somewhere to go in January and in the summer. Largely, I think he's just been really off it this season. It just always felt like such a pointless signing. I genuinely have a theory that he was signed because we needed to meet the quota of the homegrown players statute I genuinely think that was the reason, and Maresca just basically pointed, like, they probably went to Maresca and said, we need to sign a homegrown player, and he said, okay, if we're going to do that, go and get me my best player from last season. So they went and did that, and probably some PSR reasons in there as well. It does feel very random. Wouldn't be surprised if Dewsbury Hall leaves sometime in the next 6 months. I do kind of like the guy. I like his personality. He does really care. You can see he cares about being at Chelsea, which is really nice to see. But largely, I think it's been a bit of a waste of a signing. I did just look back and realise that I completely managed to skip over Cesare Casadei somehow. He's in the great category. Again, pretty much most things I've said about quite a lot of these players, which is that, yes, he hasn't played that many games, but I think pretty much every time he's played, he's looked really, really good. And the one thing that I do want to praise Casadei for is that he's played a position that isn't his. He's usually been playing as, like, a pivot player, as like a lone six kind of a player, and he's able to do that because he's so physically powerful. I don't think that is his best position. I think his best position is a box-to-box number 8, a goal-scoring number 8, no less. And I think he's probably been a bit wasted in that number 6 role, and I think someone like Andre Santos or Lezu Gachukwu would have been better served staying around to play said role. But I think Casadei has played really well when we've seen him in the season. Moving into Romeo Lavia, and again, this is another one you could very much argue could be in the average category, because he hasn't played that many games this season, but I'm going to go even a step further from putting him in great. I'm putting him in the top tier, because every time we have seen Romeo Lavia play this season, he has been spectacular. There has been one game this season where I don't think he's played well, which was the Arsenal game. I don't think he played a good game then, but other than that, every game Romeo Lavia has played this season, he has looked absolutely brilliant. Whether that's playing alongside Moises Caicedo, when it's playing alongside Enzo Fernandez, he has looked absolutely stellar. First game of the season versus Man City, and he was our best player in that game. He's played a lot of games since then. Obviously, he got in the team ahead of Enzo Fernandez for quite a while, playing Liverpool, playing Newcastle, Man United, Arsenal, as I mentioned, Aston Villa, and then obviously versus Spurs. As I say, he has been injured quite a lot this season, and it is really unfortunate that he has been injured, because every time he's played, he has looked phenomenal. His skill set is so good. His ability to just receive the ball with like his back to an opponent and then just turn and immediately pass it over the pitch, just bypass the press completely, is absolutely brilliant to watch. And especially for a player of his age, it's so just brilliant of how he's able to do all of this. And he does have a massive future ahead of him. The injuries are getting a bit concerning. He obviously missed pretty much all of last year with injury, and he's missed quite a bit of this season so far with injury. So the injuries are getting a bit concerning, so that does need to be looked at. But other than that, he has been absolutely phenomenal this season, Romeo Lavia. Now, I did say the criteria for getting on this list was you have to have started at least one game this season. And someone who you might not remember has started a game this season is Samuel Rak-Sakyi, who obviously started the game versus Astana in the Conference League. And he impressed a lot of people in that game, myself included, as well as pretty much all the times he's come off the bench in these Conference League games. So, for that, I'm going to put him in the great category. Again, similar to Josh, similar to Lavia, maybe it should be an average because he's not played this season, but I think being a young youth player, I think he 100% probably can justify the fact that he's not played that many games. And every time we've seen him, he looks really, really good. That Astana game, I think he was arguably man of the match for that game. I had no idea who the kid was coming into this season. I'd never heard his name until he was on the bench for a Conference League game. He obviously came off the bench versus, I think it was Noah, and very nearly scored a goal as well for that matter. But every time we've seen him this season, he has looked really, really good. That Astana game, I'll keep bringing it up because that is my biggest source of evidence for this. He did just look really, really good. He looked like a player playing with about 10 plus years experience of that. I know, considering who he's playing, that kind of makes sense. But he did just look really good in that game. He has, I'd say, he's been studying Romeo Lavia because he played just like him in that game. So I have been really impressed with Rak-Sakyi this season. Moving into João Felix, and João Felix is going in the average category. Now, this is one of those where I'm going to group him in with the likes of Jorgensen, with the likes of Reece, which that every time we have seen him this season, I think he's played well, but he just hasn't played enough games. So average category is where he's going to land for this one. He has obviously had quite a few fans quite recently been calling him for him to get more minutes in the Premier League quite recently, especially considering the opposition we've been playing, where his skill set's kind of required for that kind of stuff, playing against a low block. But I think he has played well. He scored, I think, about 3, 4, 5 goals in the Conference League. Obviously got quite a few assists in that time as well. Very nearly scored a free kick. Well, I say that. He did score a free kick versus Barrow in the League Cup. Unfortunately, wasn't given to him. It was ruled as an own goal off the keeper, which I think is just really, really harsh, if I'm honest. I think he's been good when we've seen him this season, and I do think he has warranted more minutes than we've been seeing him getting. I can understand why he hasn't been given as many minutes, because he plays the same position as Cole Palmer. He plays in that number 10 position, and that's kind of the hardest thing to do, getting ahead of the team, ahead of Cole Palmer. So I can understand why he hasn't played that many games, but I think in games where we have been struggling, putting him on would not be the worst idea, and I think maybe it could help us unlock the game. So I do think Felix deserves more minutes. I do really like the guy. You can tell how much he loves being at Chelsea. He's never really had a place he can call home, and I do really, really hope he works out from here. So, because I do really like the guy. I got his shirt when he came here on loan, so I do really hope this ends up being a place he can call home, because you can just tell the guy loves being at Chelsea. He loved it the first time he got here. He's loved it since he's come back. He sticks around, helps us win the Conference League, possibly something else in the time. So that would be really good to see. Moving into Carney Chukwuemeka, and Carney's another one going in the fail category. Again, hasn't been given that many minutes this season. However, he has been given one start this season, which was the game we played versus Astana. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think he played well in that game. Right for that game, he didn't seem like he was really in that game. He's been given like 2, 3, 4 games at most off the bench in Conference League games, and he hasn't really done anything particularly noteworthy in those games, so I don't particularly believe it's really worth mentioning. So I think Carney, he has been, I don't think he's been that good this season. I think there's a real possibility he leaves in January. If he doesn't leave in January, he's definitely leaving in the summer. It's a shame for Carney. He has massive potential. Like, his abilities are absolutely stellar. Obviously, the injuries have done most of the damage to Carney, which is really unfortunate for the lad, because he, as I say, he is a fantastic player. But to play devil's advocate, if he had never gotten injured, we never would have signed Cole Palmer. So it's kind of hard. I know it's really harsh on the guy, but it's really hard for me to say that him getting injured was a bad thing, considering the player we signed to replace him and how good he has been. So sounds cruel maybe, but him getting injured was the best thing that ever happened to us. I'm going to be honest. Him and Nkunku getting injured at that point were the best thing that ever happened to us, because we went and signed one of the best players in the world. I feel bad for Carney, and in another lifetime, he definitely could have been a starter at Chelsea, but the injuries have sadly undone him. So yeah, it's into the fail category for him, I'm afraid. And now we move on to another rather controversial figure in the Chelsea community right now, Christopher Nkunku. Now, I think it would be possible for me to put Nkunku into the fail category, because I think there has been quite a few games, especially recently, where he hasn't played well. However, I'm going to put him into the needs improvement category. Now, I'm holding up my hands about this. I think Nkunku, whether it's January or the summer, is going to get sold. I think it's probably more likely we see him go in the summer. I'd be very surprised to see him go in January, because I think we do probably want to keep hold of him for a bit longer. But I think he is gone. His head doesn't look like he's in it. He doesn't look like he's happy. He doesn't look like he wants to be playing. He doesn't really have the energy whenever we see him play. And he just looks really sluggish and really out of it, really. Now, he has had some good performances this season. Obviously, his standout moment will be his game-winning goal coming off the bench, scoring the 85th minute winner versus Bournemouth. That will always probably be the highlight of his Chelsea career, really. Unless he goes and does something in the second half of the season and manages to top it. But, I mean, that goal was absolutely special. It was a really, really good goal. So, I'm never going to take that away from him. And he has scored quite a few goals this season. In all competitions, he's actually our top scorer. But that kind of just points out to the fact of how easy the opposition he's been playing. He scored in, I believe, 4 Sorry, 6 out of the 8 Conference League games he's played. He did bag a hat-trick versus Barrow as well. But I think just when we've seen him this season, in the Premier League quite specifically, he looks like really disinterested. He looks really sluggish. And he doesn't really contribute to the team the way that Jackson does. At the minute, it does look like he's going to get sold. I feel bad for the guy in a way, because similar to what I said about Carney, if he had never gotten injured, yes, we wouldn't have signed Cole Palmer, but this would have been his team. He would have been the talisman of this team. He would have been the one starting every week, getting all the goals, and just being the best player. So, again, I say that injury did us the world of good, because we went and signed the best player on the planet, one of the best players on the planet. Again, it's kind of hard for me to say it's a bad thing that it happened. It's not great. It's never great whenever you get injured, but every cloud and has a silver lining. In this case, the silver lining happened to be pure gold. And as I say, Palmer's one of the best players on the planet, so good luck getting in the team ahead of him in that position. And speaking of said best player, or one of the best players on the planet, the man himself, Mr. Colder Than the Arctic Snow, Cole Palmer himself. And I don't even need to say it. Obviously, Palmer goes into the top category. And yes, he has had some performances this season when he hasn't been at his best. And those games were probably around the Liverpool, the Man United games, the Arsenal game, and quite a few of the ones recently as well. Some of those, I think, have just been bad games by his standards, and his standards are absolutely astronomical, don't get me wrong. The positives of this season for Palmer, 133.33 recurring percent outweigh the negatives. He has made so much history this season. Like, he's become the player with the most goals of any Chelsea player in a calendar year, surpassing Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, gotten the best penalty record in the Premier League, 12 in 12. He became the first Premier League player in history and the second in English League history to score 4 goals before half-time versus Brighton. The other player in English League history that is, was the division's all-time top scorer, Jimmy Greaves. Cole Palmer's in that conversation for the record. Like, that's ridiculous. Second fastest player, I think, in Chelsea to 30 goals behind Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. He has done so well this season. He's obviously bagged the hat-trick versus Brighton when he scored 4 goals. He's had some unbelievable performances this season. Had arguably the ball of the season, the pass of the season versus Newcastle for Jackson's goal up to Pedro Neto. He's had some brilliant goals this season. Obviously, the free kick versus Brighton, that goal he scored versus Aston Villa, the goal he scored quite recently versus Fulham was a brilliant goal as well. He has just done so well this season, Palmer. Yes, it's been rough. It hasn't been easy at times, and he has had to deal with players marking him out of the game. But his ability to just affect games at any given moment is absolutely unbelievable. And he is our best player. Like, that's just not even up for debate. He is our best player. And the best player of this team deserves to be in the best category of this tier, which is top. Moving into Pedro Neto. And Pedro Neto is also in the top category. I debated for quite a while whether he should be in great or top, but I settled on top because I don't think Neto has had a bad performance this season. I think every time we've seen him, he looks lively, he looks alert, he looks like you can see how much he wants to be here. Even in celebrating goals that aren't even his, he is absolutely just fired up. He's jumping all over the place. He looks like a phenomenal player as well. He obviously scored our equalising goal versus Arsenal for us to get the point in that game. He's had some really good games this season. He just does look really good. He always looks dangerous whenever he goes forward. And he has been our best signing this season. I think that's probably an undisputed fact at this point. And I really do like Pedro Neto. He has just been so good for us this season. Whether it's been on the left wing or on the right, I think he has looked phenomenal for us all season. Now, someone who also massively divides opinion on social media is Noni Madueke. And I'm putting Noni into the average tier. And it's for largely the same reasons as some of the other players that I've mentioned, which is that he has been massively up and down all season. Obviously, he started his season absolutely perfectly. He bagged the winning goal off the bench versus Servette, and in the very next game, went and scored a hat-trick versus Wolves, in the ultimate show of disrespect, obviously after calling Wolverhampton shit, he went and absolutely dunked on their team, and he has had some good performances this season. He scored a goal versus Nottingham Forest to get back into that game. He obviously scored a goal versus Southampton, and he has had some good performances here and there, but I think he's also had some pretty poor performances this season. I think you do just see the times where he does make some really stupid decisions, like his constant need to cut in and try and shoot in his left foot when he really should be run to the byline to try and cross the ball into the box. I think those kind of moments have really kind of ruined his performances this season. So because of how inconsistent he's been with his performances, I'm going to stick him in the average category. Someone who I have been royally surprised by this season, however, is Jadon Sancho, who, honestly, he's going in the great category. He could very well be in the top category. I debated it for quite a while, but I settled on putting him in the great category. He obviously got into the team when he came on at half-time versus Bournemouth. He obviously got the assist for Nkunku's winning goal in that game. He obviously managed to get another 2 assists on the bounce after that game, bagging the assist for Jackson's first goal versus West Ham and Palmer's 4th versus Brighton, and winning the penalty in that game. And I think Sancho just has looked really, really good this season. I think he's had some brilliant performances this season. He obviously bagged 2 goals versus Southampton and versus Spurs. I think, honestly, the loan into a 25 million obligation to buy looks like an absolute bargain for the guy. He has been an absolutely phenomenal player for us this season, and it just goes to show how badly he has been mistreated at Man United, that he was largely abject for his entirety at the time he was there, and then since he's come to us, he's been absolutely brilliant. I don't really have much bad to say about Jadon Sancho. He has just pretty much just looked really, really good every time we've seen him. I think possibly the only argument I'd have to say about him is we just haven't seen a whole lot of him. He had that run of games that we played from the Bournemouth game to the Forest game, and then obviously he got taken off at half-time in the Liverpool game. Obviously Neto had his spot in the team for quite a while, got it back quite recently, and hasn't really lost it. So, yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about Jadon Sancho. Moving into Tyreek George, and I'm going to sound harsh when I say this, but I'm going to put George into the average category. And yes, that does have to do with the fact we haven't seen a whole lot of him. He's, I think, probably been the academy player we have seen the most of. He's come off the bench quite a few games. He's obviously seen him, and he has started a couple games, I think 2-3 games. I think he obviously started versus FC Noah. He started versus Astana as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe he started with Shamrock Rovers as well. And I've been quite impressed with the guy every time I've seen him. I do really like what we see from George. However, I have one big problem with the guy, and that's the one thing that's kept him out of great. He is unbelievably way too eager to be shooting. And I'd be fine with that if he'd been scoring goals, but he hasn't scored one yet. Now, the one saving grace of that is he's doing it in periods of the game when we've basically already won. When he came off, he was doing it when we were 4 or 5 goals up versus Noah. He came off the bench in the Barrow game, and he was trying to do it then when we were 5-0 up. He's doing it versus Panathinaikos as well when we were 4-0 up at that point. So I can understand why he's doing it at certain points, but at the same time, I think there are just multiple opportunities he's had where he could have played a better pass, where we could have got another goal out of it, but he's chosen to shoot. He is just so desperate to get his first goal. You can see it. And you can see how much it will mean to him when he does eventually get that first goal, and I hope it comes soon. But I do think he just needs to slow it down a bit, because we've had this problem with Noni where he is just too eager to cut in on his left foot and shoot. We don't need another version of that, because it just doesn't help in certain scenarios where players are so desperate to try and score for themselves that they neglect actually helping the team, and I don't want to see that from George. So, other than that, I have very few complaints about the guy, but if he can sort that out, he can be brilliant. We have to talk about Mykhailo Mudryk. Now, obviously, everybody, I'm assuming, has seen what has been going on with Mudryk, obviously involved in the weird scenarios going on with him being suspended. It's a weird scenario. Not going to touch on it for too long, but I just kind of feel bad for the guy. Like, his career at Chelsea hasn't been anything really noteworthy, and this just now on top of it, facing down a 4-year ban, it just feels like very, very like harsh for the guy. So I feel bad for him. But as for his performances this season, he's actually been really, really good. Like, I can't honestly... Well, actually, I can name one performance this season, I think, where he's not been good, which was that second game when we played Servette. But all the games he's played in the Conference League and that game versus Barrow in the League Cup, and even, honestly, the game we played versus Newcastle where we got absolutely battered in that game, I thought he was our best player. Well, second best, actually. Cucurella was our best player in that game. But, yeah, I thought he was absolutely brilliant in that game. But yeah, Mudryk, every time he's played this season, he has been brilliant, and he's scored some absolute bangers. Like, some brilliant, brilliant goals. Like, that goal he scored for FC Noah, the one he scored for Heidenheim, like, they have just been such good goals. He's obviously got one versus Panathinaikos as well. So, and he's bagged a couple of assists in that time as well. So, every time he's played this season, I thought he has been really, really good. You can see that Maresca has been working on him. I just do really feel bad for the guy that it has now resulted in him getting suspended, probably facing down like an 18-month ban at minimum, I'd imagine. So that feels... I feel for the guy in that aspect, but... So I have put him into the average category. So on performances, he could probably be in the great category, but because of the lack of time we've seen him this season, I'm going to keep him in the average category. Moving into the penultimate player on this list, we have Nicholas Jackson. And Nicholas Jackson's going to go into the great category of this tier list. I said that so randomly. Jackson has been really, really good this season. He's obviously bagged, I think, about 9 goals this season in, I want to say, about 17 appearances, 16, 17 appearances, something like that. He has been really, really good this season. And he's been vastly improved this season, been one of the most improved players in the Premier League this season. He has just been so, so good. And he has just shown how important he is to this team. Because every time that he has played well, I think our entire team's played well. And I think when he isn't having his best game, our entire team doesn't have a particularly brilliant game. Which I think is something we've been seeing quite recently. He has dipped quite a bit recently when he's been a bit of a dry spell. He's got no goals in his last 3 games. That's getting a bit concerning, so he does need to put that to bed quite soon. I think Jackson has been really, really good this season. He has quietened down the whole signing a new striker thing. If he doesn't continue to rack up goals consistently, that's going to come back again, and he needs to be careful of that, because there are some good strikers out there, especially ones that could very well be available. Obviously, we know of our past fondness for Victor Osimhen and how close we were to getting that over the line. Obviously, we know there have been rumours for us going for Victor Gyökeres. We've had rumours for Alexander Isak as well. Obviously, previous interest in players like Samu and John Duran. So he does need to be careful, because one small slip-up and he could very well be replaced. Jackson has been really good this season. As I say, I think his recent dip in form and a few other performances this season when I don't think he's played to his top-level ability has probably dragged him down a little bit. Probably being really, really harsh, and I know that, so I'm going to leave him in great for now. Very easily could be in top, and if you had him in top, I wouldn't fight you on it. I'd understand why, but for me, I'm going to put him in great. And the final player on this tier list is Marc Guiu, and Marc Guiu is going in the great category of this list. I was really, really happy with signing Guiu. A 6 million fee for a La Masia born and bred striker felt like an absolute steal for me. I loved his interview when he first joined the club. Like, just everything he said about wanting to be here, wanting to help Chelsea win the Premier League, win the Champions League, become the best striker in the world. And I really like that kind of mentality from Guiu. I think he struggled quite a lot towards the beginning of the season. Obviously, he was starting quite a few Conference League games. He's obviously started the first 2 versus Servette. Obviously had quite an I'll say, embarrassing miss in that first Servette game when he wasn't able to score from an open net. So that did him no favours, and he struggled to get quite a few minutes. He's only played one Premier League game this season, which was off the bench versus Man City, the first game of the season even. But I do believe he should be getting more minutes. Since the Conference League, he hasn't been getting as many minutes, but he has been getting more starts. He started all 4 of our last Conference League games, obviously versus Noah, where he did get his first goal, all of his own making as well, which is something I do really like at Guillou. He was unfortunately not able to score for Heidenheim, but he did bag a brace versus Astana and a hat-trick versus Shamrock Rovers. So, and he is the top scorer in the Conference League, which is really, really good to see from the guy. And one thing, as I say, I do really like about Guillou, most of his goals he creates himself. Like, that goal versus Noah was him capitalising on a mistake from the opposing player. His first 2 versus Shamrock were the same thing. I think his first goal versus Astana, yes, it wasn't capitalising on the mistake of an opponent, but he just pretty much received the ball from Neto on the halfway line and absolutely just bulldozed his way through to the goal, which was really, really good to see. I think Guillou has massive, massive potential. I think players that are looking at someone like Liam Delap and thinking how good he is, Guillou is the same kind of player. He's the same profile of player, that big, strong, classic centre forward. He's good with his head, he's powerful, will piss the hell out of some defenders and just keep harassing the backline that entire game. Guillou's the same kind of player. Obviously, Delap does have 3 years extra experience than him. He is the reason that I don't think we need someone like Liam Delap. We've got that player 3 years younger in Marc Guillou. And Guillou might actually, I think his potential is actually better than Liam Delap's. So I really like Marc Guillou. I hope he has a good future. Chances are he probably ends up on loan so he can get a bit more of that experience. But I do really want to see him get more minutes this season. I hope, because we're playing Morecambe in the FA Cup this season quite soon, he'll probably start that game. I hope he goes and bags a ton of goals in that game. It'd be really, really good to see. I am looking forward to seeing so much more out of Marc Guillou. And yeah, I think he has a big future ahead of him. Oh my god, that was so long. If you're not sick of hearing my voice, I know I am. So yeah, I'm gonna end this video here. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you all very much enjoyed. Please leave your thoughts on the players this season at this point in the season. I would really like to hear them. And yeah, thank you so much for these past 6 months. I've really appreciated all the support that I've gotten on my channel. Whether you're my personal friends that I know in person, or you're just random people on the internet who've decided to subscribe to me and watch my content, I really appreciate it, whoever you are. I really do appreciate it, and I hope to continue making videos for you in the year to come. So thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it once again, and I will sign off here now by saying my name is the Crimson Wolf. I am the reddest Chelsea fan on the internet, and you have all, as usual, been amazing. And I will see you for more videos in this coming new year. So yeah, come on you Blues, and good luck with it.